Hey, how's it going, everyone? So here we have the very last game of this series from the Chess Tournament 3. Yeah, I'd like to thank the kids, all the kids again for participating in the tournament and for all their hard work and passion for chess. Yeah, for the most part, we've seen tremendous improvement. There are some things that we have. I mean, of course, there's always going to be things if you play chess for many years that you have to work on and improve on. But I would say there are some like really obvious things that we do need to improve upon. Namely, we need to work on not giving away our pieces for free, and also getting our pieces developed quickly and trying to get our king safe generally by castling. So yeah, those are things that we should be beginning to like sort of like get a good feel for what we're trying to do. Um, so yeah, but for the most part, we're not making those kind of mistakes as often anymore, which I'm happy to see. But we do need to. There are some kids, to be honest, that we still need to work on, like not giving away your pieces. Um, but then other kids seem to have a pretty good grasp of what we're trying to work on right now. So yeah, so thank you again for everyone participating, and let's get into this last game here. So here we have Bryan with the white pieces and Nathan with the black pieces. So let me float this on top. Okay. So here we have e4. So yeah, e4, once again, we're attacking the d5 square and opening up the diagonal for our bishop and queen. Knight c6. So yeah, Nathan is quite loyal to the Nimzovich defense, which I think is cool. Like, there's not that many people who play the Nimzovich defense. So yeah, so we have knight f3 here. And yeah, remember the knight is a mirror of this other knight. They're both attacking these two squares in the center. And also, whenever the opponent once again like allows you to get e4 and d4 in, that's generally the best move. So here we could just also play d4 with a classical pawn center. Keep in mind, anytime you push the d pawn, you have a natural defender in the queen. So that's like opposed to the e pawn, which is undefended, but the d pawn always has protection. Um, yeah, so here the knight wouldn't be able to take it. It could, but it would be a bad trade for black because the knight is worth more points than the pawn. All right, so here we have knight f3, e5. So yeah, here we kind of switched us into an e4 opening. So I think more in the style of the Nimzovich is actually you could play even like d5 or d6 is more common with the idea of maybe playing the bishop to g4 early. But yeah, e5 is obviously a perfectly fine move. We're just transposing away from the Nimzovich and back into an Italian game. So yeah, so this position I've seen I've seen this position a lot of times. This tournament we had a very large percentage of Italian games. So here we had knight f6, which is the two knights variation. The other variation that's common here is bishop c5. And then we've looked at some games in class with the Evans Gambit with b4, which I think is a pretty cool opening and definitely something that like I think kids should be able to like understand this opening fairly well, and it's kind of intuitive. So I think b4 is a fun opening to play. With the idea is that you're sacrificing a pawn to try to fight for this d4 square, so you get to play the pawn here with a tempo. And then there's two main moves for black here, either bishop a5 or bishop e7. If they play something like bishop to c5, then d4 just basically gives you everything you want. So let's just count the defenders. So here we have 3 defenders versus 3 attackers. So we have enough defenders. And then after something like this, probably take with the bishop. Here we just have really good compensation for the pawn. So we have 3 pieces developed compared to only 1 for our opponent. Even more importantly, we just have this really strong pawn center where we control these 4 squares. The white king is able to get castled, and it's still going to be 2 moves before the black king can castle. So yeah, so the Evans Gambit is a pretty fun opening to play. You also don't have to play this b4 sacrifice. You could just play c3 right away with the same idea of playing d4. And then we also looked at the yeah, well, I was gonna say the Max Lang attack, but that comes from more from this knight f6 move order. So yeah, so after knight f6, Bryan played this knight g5 idea, and knight g5 is a move here. It's kind of an annoying move. There's actually throughout chess history been a lot of discussion about this move. I think Lasker called this. Actually, I don't really want to say what he said because it was kind of he called this a beginner's move, and then other really strong players said like, no, this is a perfectly fine move. So yeah, so even like really early on in a chess game amongst like the strongest players in the world throughout history, there was already a lot of discussion about this knight g5 move. So yeah, the reason why Lasker called this a beginner's move is because we talk about not moving the same piece twice in the opening, getting your other pieces developed and getting your king castled. But here knight g5 does pose an annoying threat. We're immediately going after the f7 pawn. And yeah, the f7 pawn is, again, the weakest pawn in the position because only the black king is defending it. So here we have two defenders, or I'm sorry, two attackers and only one defender. And there's not a good way to really get another defender on this pawn. Like queen e7 would not be logical because we don't want to give up the queen for even if we got the knight and the bishop for just the queen. That would be a bad trade for black. So this isn't really a defender because because white could just go ahead and go for this, and this is just much better for white here. So yeah, so here they have to play this move d5 to block the diagonal, and this actually should be a pawn sacrifice. So so here we have two attackers and there's two defenders. So it looks like black just has enough defenders that that we could just take back. But throughout experience, the problem with knight takes d5 is that there's this move called the fried liver attack with knight takes f7, which is pretty annoying. And then also I think the theory actually just gives d4 as actually also being probably the best move in this position. I think the theory here is after knight takes d4. I'm trying to remember what we're supposed to do here. Oh, okay, yeah, just c3, and then after c3, once the knight moves, we'll have two attackers on the knight on d5 and only one defender. And keep in mind that the idea of d4 was not only to fight for the center, but also to allow the bishop to protect the knight. So if the knight takes if the queen takes a knight, then the bishop would just take back. So yeah, so this so from what I recall, d4 is considered even stronger than knight takes f7, but I think that knight takes f7 is also very good. So here it has an 86% win percentage for white in the database. And there's actually some discussion if black could hold the fried liver attack, but it's just not a fun position to play at all. So yeah, so here after e takes d5, there's two main moves for black here. I'll give you a side variation, which isn't a main move, which I like to play, is this knight d4 move. But there's just a bunch of theory on this. I won't get into that too much in this video. So yeah, so basically the main ideas here are either knight a5 attacking the bishop, and the idea here is if the bishop comes here to give a check, after c6, here we're giving up a pawn, so we are down a pawn, black, and we're going to remain down a pawn. But after this variation, this is supposed to be considered actually pretty even here. Yeah, I don't remember like all the theory, but I think like bishop d3 is supposed to be the best move here. Or okay, so bishop e2 is the most common, but bishop d3 is also a move. And I think there's something like okay, yeah, I thought we could play like knight d5, but okay, so apparently I was wrong about that. So here is h6, and then knight f3, and then here I think we play e4 next. And yeah, so now we're just gaining space. We have open diagonals for our bishops, and the white pieces are kind of have a difficult time developing here. So yeah, so this is kind of an interesting variation, and this is the main line in this opening actually. And yeah, you kind of just get like this messy position, and you're down a pawn as black, but your king is going to get castled just a little bit earlier. You probably can fight for the e file, and you have a bit of a lead in development, so you have 3 pieces versus 2. So yeah, this is a pretty interesting opening already. And then the other move that we talked about in class, I talked with Nathan because we went over this game, is this move b5. Actually, my first ever chess coach taught me about this move b5 in a lesson. He gave me like 15 minutes to try to think about the best move for black, and then he told me this b5 move. So I don't know if he really wanted me to think for 15 minutes, or he's just happy that like he could not think. He could get paid for 15 minutes of work while I'm just thinking. So yeah, I try not to let my chess students like dwell on the position for that long if I could tell they're like not making progress. But if they are making progress, then I will then I will like give them some time to work it out, of course. But yeah, if they get stuck, I at least try to give them some hints. So yeah, the idea here is after bishop takes b5, queen takes d5, hitting the bishop and the pawn on g2. This is a quite comfortable position for black to play. It's a pretty nice position to play too because we have like some good development of our pieces already. We're threatening the knight, we're threatening the rook already. Already White has to find this like really nice move Queen F3, which I think like at any rating level like say under 1400, they're gonna have a hard time finding this move because it doesn't look like it addresses the threats. The threat was to win the rook and to win the knight, and this Queen F3 move does not address both of those threats. But it does add another threat, so we do have to basically take, and then probably yeah, Bishop D7 here, and then notice that if they play Bishop takes C6 with the idea of removing the defender of the E5 pawn, this would not actually we're not the knight can't actually take the pawn is what I'm trying to say because it was pinned and then the rook falls. So yeah, so for the students watching, especially like Nathan and Bryan, I really like advise you guys to, we can go over these lines together, but I really advise you to look at some of these lines on your own because they're just really fun lines to play. So they're just what we looked at there is I think very exciting. So yeah, so yeah, I recommend that that you guys go over these lines if you like, and then if you have any questions, we could always go over this during class time. That's of course never an issue. So here we have knight takes d5, queen f3. So yeah, I really like this move queen f3 by Bryan. So here he has two threats. He's threatening to. Okay, no, I remember the game. So there will be two threats next turn. I'm sorry. So yeah, queen f3 is just attacking the knight twice, and it's only protected once. So here we have two attackers versus one defender. So here Nathan made a good move of taking the knight because it was unprotected. And then here Bryan also made a good move of taking the knight as well. So now this is what I was referring to. Here we have two threats. We're threatening to take on f7. So we have two attackers versus only one defender. And we're also threatening to take the knight because we have two attackers and only one defender. And if we actually get the knight, we're winning a lot more than a pawn. So let's just give a sample variation. So they say they play like queen e7 to address this threat, but not the other threat. So so if we take, so not only am I winning a pawn, but I'm also forking the king and the rook. So I will win the rook next turn. Yeah. So here f6 this is an example of addressing the first threat of queen takes f7, but missing the idea of bishop takes c6. And we looked at this during class. I think Nathan ended up coming up with a really good idea here. We talked about queen g6, that was the first move that jumped out to me, which we're just we're protecting the f7 pawn, and we're also protecting the c6 knight. I think someone ended up recommending knight d8 here, which kind of looks a bit silly, right? To like undevelop your piece, but I think knight d8 is actually like a reasonable move here. We do protect the f7 pawn. We also provide protection to b7. So now there's two attackers on b7, but we have two defenders, so we have enough defenders. So yeah, so my first impression of this game was queen g6 would be the right move. I still think that's probably better than knight d8, but knight d8 is quite interesting. Yeah, f6 just misses this threat of bishop takes c6, and then yeah, now we're forking the rook and the king here. So bishop d7, queen takes, and then yeah. So like I said, whenever the position sort of gets a bit out of hand, that's when I'm going to start going quickly over the position. So okay, so king d6, d4. So yeah, I like Bryan opening up the position. So yeah, he's threatening to win the queen here, and he's also trying to open up the d file and also the e file. So yeah, so I think this move d4 was a really nice move. So here we had bishop c6 counterattacking. Okay, so they took. So Bryan took. Yeah, I don't know if take. So okay, so remember the theory, right? When you're up material, you just want to simplify the position. So I think the easiest way for White to win, unless I'm missing like some just really decisive move, is just play queen takes c6 check. So now the king is if they want to take the queen, they have to take with the king, and then here you play bishop takes, and now you're able to trade off the queens and a pair of bishops, and now you're just up a whole rook. So see, you have two rooks, and your opponent only has one rook, and then also you're gonna be able to win the pawn here, and yeah. So here you're up two pawns and a rook. So this should be very smooth sailing from here. Okay, so d takes e5. Yeah, so I think Nathan here probably should play queen takes, I believe, because yeah, when he plays pawn takes, he's allowing the same idea of queen takes c6 and then bishop takes g5 again. Okay, so this time Bryan found that idea, so very nice. Okay, yeah. So from here we should go over this pretty quickly. Yeah, really nice developing moves from Bryan, and yeah, that's why it's opening theory in chess. It is really important these days. So yeah, it's important that we know like some of the variations, especially like against knight g5, for example. It's important that we know like some of the main lines at least. King d5, knight c3. Okay, no problem. Like here, I just prefer taking the bishop, but it does give black these two connected pawns, so I could see why Bryan avoided that possibility. Yeah, f3 I don't get. Just put the rook on the only open file on the chessboard, and then here we could double up the rook, so we could put the rook on d1, move the rook to d2, and then put the other rook on d1. So therefore you have just like complete control of the d file for the rest of the game. Yeah, I don't understand bishop c5 at all, right? When you're the side that's down material, you don't want to trade pieces. And when you're the side that's up material, you want to try to trade as many pieces as possible. So good job by Bryan occupying the open file. Okay. Okay. Really good. So this move is good. I thought rook d5 also looked interesting. So rook d5, we're attacking the a pawn and the e pawn, and we're threatening. I was gonna say we're threatening a checkmate, but the king can move to b2. So my mistake. But yeah, rook d5 seems logical. Yeah, rook c7 or rook d7 also seems good, hitting the c7 pawn. King b2. Okay, good. So yeah, Nathan's doing a good job of trying to fight back here. Okay, yeah. So here Bryan's trying to trade off pieces. Yeah, I think I would just take the c7 pawn here because this rook is a lot more active than this rook. But yeah, I can't be critical. Like I always say, if you're up material, trade off pieces is fine. But here, this rook is just so much more active than the rook on h8 that I wouldn't want to make this trade. I can just easily grab the c7 pawn here and be fine. Okay, b4, a4. Yeah, so good job by Nathan. He got a pass pawn. Like it's not going to be enough because these two rooks are going to do a good job of stopping the pawn from advancing as well as the knight. The knight's going to be a really good piece here. But yeah, at least Nathan was able to try to generate some counterplay here. So rook c1. Okay. So yeah, I think Bryan got a little too passive. He got pretty worried about this pass pawn, which is understandable. Like it is a dangerous pawn. So here we have there. Okay, a2. So yeah, I like the way that Nathan is fighting back here. c4. Yeah, I think here we want to get the king away from the pawn. So I think something like knight c5 with the idea of knight d3 would have been quite good. So let's give a sample. So let's go here now instead of knight f2. So here, then say like, I say they go here and then check, and then here. Yeah, here I think we could just play something like, what's the best way to play this? We could just take the e5 pawn, of course. I was looking at before the black rook came to a8. I thought we could play knight c1 here and just have two attackers on the pawn. So yeah, so I guess here there's a lot of good moves. We could also even just play like rook d2 and then just be willing to give up the knight for the pawn. So something like this should be more than enough because we're just up a whole rook here, and then yeah, we could just start like pushing our pawns. Yeah, there's a lot of ways to. I mean, there's basically like limitless ways to win this position. We could also play like rook a5 here and attack the e pawn and try to pick up these pawns, and then just have like three passed pawns that are connected. Okay, so yeah, but let's go back to what happened in the game. Okay, so knight f2. All right, so yeah, I think that Bryan had the same idea of knight d3 check. And then yeah, here I think Nathan had to play rook a8, but I guess I see the point, right? So basically, he's hoping after knight d3 he can take. So let me just show it on the board. So knight d3, take, and then hope that this passed pawn is going to win. The problem is that these two pawns versus one is going to be the deciding factor. So so say for example like okay, it's white's turn. So say we go. Yeah, so we play rook a3 and then king b2, and then we could just take the pawn immediately, but let's force the king farther away from our pawns. So we want to force the black king farther away from these pawns. So then they promote to a queen. So we'll take, and then we'll push. Then we'll push again. And then you see how we're going to create a pass pawn since we have 2 pawns versus 1. So here, and then yeah, now after if the pawn takes, we just take back and go get a queen. If the pawn doesn't take, say the king tries to attack, we either take the pawn and queen, or we just push straight up the board and queen. Probably taking the pawn is most accurately because why not pick up the pawn while we're at it? Okay, so yeah, so here, so yeah, so I think here probably Nathan's best chance was actually just to maybe go for this variation of taking and taking, but maybe Nathan realized that this was also just losing for him, so he didn't go for that. But yeah, I think this would have been an interesting swindle attempt. A swindle is when you try to win from like a losing position. So yeah, I think that maybe this could have inconvenienced Bryan a little bit. I would say. Um, So yeah, so I think it's a good idea. So Bryan just got tired of this pass pawn. He's willing to give up the knight just to get rid of this pass pawn, which I think is smart. Okay, so yeah, and then actually he ends up picking up the rook. So yeah, this was a nice skewer by Bryan. Once the king moves, we're gonna have 2 attackers on the black rook on d3 and only 1 defender. And then yeah, here Nathan resigned. So this was a really nice game by Bryan. This is one of Bryan's better games. So yeah, I think Nathan just got in some trouble here because he's not like that familiar with what to do after knight g5. So yeah, once again, we don't. This is just one of those concepts you kind of have to memorize. There probably is like a better chess way to explain it, but it's just like well known that you don't take the pawn back here. And this is just like once again, it's just something you have to know because you want to take the pawn back. Generally speaking, you want to get material even. It just happens in this position that taking the pawn is not so good. But yeah, here Bryan did miss his opportunity to go for the fried liver attack. So I think that Nathan is perfectly fine up into this f6 move. I think if he plays like queen g6 here, he's fine. Here the computer actually gives this knight d4 move, which I hadn't considered at all. And yeah, this is just this would just have been a crazy variation to find. Yeah, I guess apparently the king is safe on d8, which is not at all obvious to me up front. So yeah, this was possible as well. But yeah, this doesn't strike me as something that many humans would go for off the bat. Yeah, like I said, queen g6 was the move that popped into my mind. And now that I do recall, we did look at queen f6 as well. So this was a move that we also talked about. And then I'm curious after knight d8. Yeah, even knight d8, we're just white is just very, very minimally better here. So like nothing to even talk about really. So this was also kept the position even. So I think just this f6 move, spotting that there is a threat of queen takes f7, but missing the threat of bishop takes d6 was the reason why Nathan ended up losing this game the way he did. But yeah, these are still like some of the top players that I teach right now. So yeah, I'm really proud of the effort that Nathan and Bryan have been putting in the chess, and yeah, I think if they stick with it, that's the big question, right? If you stick with something, the improvement will come. So it's just it's just that if we work together smart and we talk about things that interest them, the improvement is gonna keep coming very quickly. So yeah, great job everyone in this tournament. Thank you again for participating. We have another tournament next Saturday, May 9th at 11:30. So yeah, I hope everyone can play in that. And yeah, thanks everyone for watching the videos. I really hope you enjoyed. I tried to give you guys something instructive to learn from since you guys gave me so much of your time and effort. So yeah, thanks again. It was fun. I don't know if I'll do this again anytime soon, but it was fun for this time. And I will do like some random game analysis whenever some interesting games occur. Yeah, thanks everyone. Have a good one. Stay safe.